Now here's a fancy pants afternoon tea review in Chicago. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the yummy of afternoon tea. Chicago Tea Tour, second stop of 4. Our second tea time was at the most recommended Chicago venue, the Drake Hotel. Thank you to the 55 people who sponsored this tea tour. It was actually hard to get reservations at some of the other suggested high-end venues, like the Peninsula and London House, which had no tables for the weekend we went to Chicago. The Pendry and Gwen's didn't even make the cut because all I could find was a boozy alcoholic afternoon tea, which is definitely not my thing. And the Langham price scared me away very quickly. Also, it was prepay. So, the Drake was the one high-end tea venue we hit during this Chicago tea tour. Let's get into this review. Starting with the good, the entire experience was good. But the top 4 good things were: Number 1, we were luckily given an amazing table right beside the fountain, like we were some type of VIP guests or something. Seriously though, it appears as though all or most of the tables for 2 guests were by this fountain, so we were lucky to be a table of 2 and seated in this great location. This venue was huge, and they run their tea for hours and hours, serving hundreds of people per day. I was in awe at the size. Our reservation was at 5 p.m. Second, the food here was endless, or appeared to be endless. I'll speak more about this, but I have never been to a tea where the food is refillable. I know there are some high-end places in the UK where food is refillable, but this is the first tea I've ever attended where that's offered. The third good thing, our server was amazing. Shout out to Asmir, who took such good care of us. And fourth, my tea guest was tickled pink that there was a harpist here and Christmas carolers during our tea time. You do pay extra for the caroler days, but my tea guest was so thrilled it made it even more special for us. Now, let's talk food and tea. My friend chose the Sugar Plum Fairy seasonal tea and she liked it. And I chose, of course, Earl Grey, and it was also good, a standard Earl Grey. The food menu was clearly described online when booking and on the table. It was divided by what they called a warm tier, where 1 scone per guest was sitting beside a tea cake and a pecan tart. Then there was a savory tier and, of course, a pastry plate. Starting with the savory tier, because I didn't want salmon because I don't like it, our server asked what I wanted to replace it with, such as a roasted veggie wrap from the vegetarian menu, or maybe the turkey and cheese from the children's menu. I hesitated because they both sounded good, and the server said he'd bring both. Not only did he bring both, but we also got the Biscoff and Jam Sammy from the children's menu. Needless to say, there were ample savory sandwiches, and we could have even asked for more than this. This is what the salmon sandwich looked like from my tea guest's plate. She said it was yummy with a sweet and sour apple compote on top, which she really enjoyed. All of the sandwiches I ate tasted very good. They were all on different breads with good fillings, so I was very happy with that. A couple of the breads were a bit dried out, for example the Biscoff one, but this is just so much food it wasn't a big deal. The turkey roll, the roasted veggie, and the turkey baguette were my favorite savory bites, but pretty much everything here on this tier was good. After eating our savories, we hit the warm tier, which of course wasn't warm anymore by the time we got to it. We each got a scone, a tea cake, and a pecan tart. The scone was served with a shared pot of cream, raspberry jam, and lemon curd. The cream had a vanilla taste, so it wasn't proper authentic, but it tasted good. The scone had an unenjoyable aftertaste for me. I remember that taste from scones in Florida. Something in the water? A certain brand of baking powder or flour that we don't have in Canada? I don't know, but this scone had a weird aftertaste actually for both of us. The texture of the scone was good though. Our server, of course, offered us more scones, so you can get more than the one that is served to you. We declined more scones. The other 2 sweet items on this tier were both good, especially the pecan tart. Canadians do love a good pecan butter tart. For sweets, we each got a canal, a chocolate ganache cake, a macaron, and a raspberry entremets cake. The variety of these sweets was great. Colors, shapes, flavors, all very well done. The chocolate ganache cake was by far the best part of the pastry tier for both of us. It was so creamy and absolutely decadent. While I love the uniqueness and effort of the canal, unfortunately this wasn't the correct interior. A canal, or a cannelé as some people say, should have a baked custard interior with little holes, and this one was very dense, so that didn't work for me. But I appreciated the uniqueness and effort of that sweet. The entremont cake was fine, the crispy chocolate bottom was great. I am not a fan of gelatin desserts, but if you are, this would be a good one for you. And macarons are a waste for me, so I put that on my tea friend's plate because I am not a fan of these airy cookies. I wish we had had tummy space for more sweets, because I know I would have loved more of that chocolate ganache, but alas, we didn't even finish what we were given, so we certainly didn't ask for more. But we could have, which is pretty cool. You'd never leave this tea hungry. Okay, so food here was definitely part of the good. Moving on to the bad, besides a high price tag and challenges getting a reservation because it was so full, there was nothing bad here. On this day, at this time, with the carolers, our tea cost $82 per person, which is 115 Canadian dollars before tax and gratuity. So yes, an expensive tea time, but definitely a holiday experience worth experiencing. So I can't even really call it a true bad aspect. This was actually less expensive than some of the other high-end options I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It's clearly hard to get a reservation here because people obviously feel it's worth it. If I was local, I could see myself making tea time here an annual holiday tradition. For the ugly, absolutely nothing here was ugly. And for the yummy, all of the savories, the entire tier, and the chocolate ganache cake took the yummy bites for both of us. Even though the scone and accompaniments were not up to my taste standard, this afternoon tea was a great experience, so my Queen of Afternoon Tea rating has to be 5 out of 5. I really cannot give it any less since this venue was really nice, the service was impeccable, and the food was ample and varied, and there were more really yummy bites than not. I am pleasantly surprised and so glad I made the effort to get a table at the Drake. Thanks again to those who donated funds to this tea experience. The next tea tour options are in the link if you care to review the options to donate for the next ones. Now, have you been to tea at the Drake? Would you go? Share your impressions of this perfectly scored tea experience below, and please follow for the rest of our Chicago tea tour. 2 more to go, and they're outside the city limits.